Hello, my friends. Welcome. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. Today, we're going to talk about the benefits of letting our kids fail. We're going to talk about the fact that we have to let them fail in order to let them become the adults that we want them to be. Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to the Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
All right, welcome to today's show. I hope that your day's going well. I hope that your summer is going well. Or fall. I'm not sure when this is going to get out. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's going to come out in the summer. I want to talk to you today about one of the most difficult things we have to do as parents if we're going to help our kids live lives that are meaningful and become the adults that we want them to become. And it is super difficult. This idea that we're going to talk about, it's really simple. And almost everybody I know that I talk to, they agree with me. But then there's a disconnect between what they say to me and how they actually live their lives with their own kids. And I get it because I'm one of those parents. And that is this. You have to let your kids fail. You have to let your kids fail both at regulating and at life, right? Let your kids fail at regulating. I talk about this all the time with devices. My kids regulate their devices on their own without me doing it. All four of them. Do they always do it exactly the way I want them to? No. Are there times they're on their devices more than I want them to be? Sure, maybe. I don't know. I'd have to really think that one through because to me, I just don't understand. Well, what about if they're just laying around? You know what? There are days that I would like to just lay around. Yeah, but you don't. Actually, there are days that I do because rest is important. Recovery is important. And we are such a go do it all, do it now society. We find meaning in false things, right? We find meaning, not in false things, but we find meaning that is incomplete. Maybe that's a better way to put it. I had a mentor in graduate school who used to tell us that tasks and relationships hold themselves in tension. And I think that we tend to find ourselves at one extreme or the other on this. Right? Like we either want our kids to just totally be doing tasks all the time. We're just always playing sports. We're always playing, musical instruments or in theater or whatever it is. We're always volunteering at the local civic center or our church. And we don't teach them relationship. We teach them relationship through task. And I mean, the business model for me on that is great because those kids become adults that will often come to therapy because they don't know how to connect to people outside of task. But here's the rub. If you go ahead and let them fail, they're going to try to make relationships. They're going to try to do tasks, and it isn't going to work. So my kids, they're on their devices because in part I let them fail at regulating their devices. They regulate their sleep because I let them fail at regulating their sleep. One of the things that happens, in fact, it's interesting. My wife has a client who is a teenager who just regulates her own device usage because her parents are like, I don't care. Right? And a lot of times I think people mistake when I say I don't regulate my kids that I'm saying I don't care. I do care, but I talk to them about what we want. If you think about it, if we're going somewhere, we need to know the direction. We're going to go on a trip here in a few days. And when we do that, we need to make sure that we're at the right place at the right time to get to where we want to go. And so I don't care about their device usage unless it impacts that in a negative way. Unless that goes against the thing that we're trying to do overall, which is raise good, healthy human adults. And I can't tell you how many examples I have of people who refuse to let their kids fail, and those kids who are never allowed to fail become adults who don't know how to regulate. The benefit of letting your kids fail is they have to figure it out then. Now, they can figure it out with your help, with your support, with your guidance, but let your kids make decisions that you don't agree with. Let your kids make decisions that you think are wrong. I don't think she listens to this, so I'm going to use one of my daughters as an example. One of my daughters took a job this summer that I didn't think she should take. I didn't think it would give her what she was hoping it would give her. And it turns out I was right. And you know what? It didn't hurt her. She took the job. She failed, air quotes. And it's okay. She's going to stop the job at the end of the summer and move on with her life goals. You have to let your kids fail. Let them fail at regulation. Let them fail at their friendships. Let's just talk a few practical things here. You shouldn't be mediating your kids' friends' problems. You should not be the mediator for your kids and their friends. You can coach your kid. You can even coach your kids' friends, I guess. That would be a little weird, but you can. But you shouldn't be mediating their disagreements. You should coach them. You should teach them. You should train them. You shouldn't be the mediator for your kids in the school. Now, look, there are times when you have to advocate for your kids. But especially as they get older, those times should be less. You should teach your kids how to advocate for themselves, which means they'll fail, which means things won't go well a couple times, maybe a lot of times, and it'll be okay. Teach your kids to fail. Let them fail. My kids have dated people that I didn't like. It's okay. They knew I didn't like them, and I was polite to the kids. As polite as a dad could be to his daughter's boyfriend. Let them try out for teams and get cut. Let them try out for teams, make the team, and not get playing time. And don't be the one who goes to the coach and says, why isn't my kid playing? I need to know why my daughter isn't playing. She's an all-star. No, she's not. Nope. Now, look, I get it. There are coaches out there that don't know what they're doing. So do your best to pick that. But if that happens, then you admit to your kid that you failed and you weren't able to find a coach that doesn't stink, that isn't terrible. And you tell them, next time we'll look. Well, I'm doing an episode on this in the future, but one of my friends, all three of his kids play youth soccer. And his oldest, he had a conversation with him about like, hey, how much do you think is an appropriate amount for us to pay as a family for you to play spring and fall youth soccer? That's brilliant. Brilliant. Because here's what you're saying. You're inviting your kid into the decision-making process, and if it doesn't work, you're letting him fail. You're letting him learn the lessons of engagement and failure. And that is worth more than anything he'll learn on a soccer field, probably. When we let our kids fail, we let them problem solve. Look, if you're an adult who has complained about younger people in your workforce not being able to problem solve, and you're simultaneously solving all of your kids' problems, you've got to rethink that. You have to rethink that because you're creating the problem you're complaining about. When I was brand new as a dad, my oldest was probably less than 2 because we moved when she was 2.5 from this place. I was working at a place where one of the women, her kids were older, and we were talking about something, and somehow chores came up, and she said to me, you'll learn that it's just easier to do most of the chores yourself. What I thought was really ironic about that was later that very day, that woman's daughter came into our communal office where we all were and needed her mom to solve a problem. Now, her daughter was an adult, mid-20s at the time. And she needed her mom to solve a problem for her that she was capable of solving. In fact, I remember sitting there thinking, you could solve this. The woman created the very problem that she complained about. And you know what? Maybe that kid turned it around. I actually would like to think that adult in her mid-20s became an adult in her mid-30s who solved all that, because I do believe in growth. But we can help our kids get there sooner by just letting them fail. We can help them be able to advocate for themselves by allowing them to fail at advocating for themselves. You do not learn to ride a bike without failing at it first. You just don't. Sooner or later, you're going to fall. You don't learn to tie your shoes without failing at it first. And when we remove all failures, we remove learning opportunities. We remove natural teaching opportunities that life gives us for our kids. Let them fail. Don't mediate their friends' problems. Don't be the go-to person for their problems with their teachers or the administration. Teach them to do it. Coach them through it. Don't be the mediator for their bosses. It's amazing to me. Every time I see the statistic, I think it can't be real. And then I go read the research, and it really is real. Job recruiters, HR departments report that 25% of new job candidates brought their parents to the job interview. Adults brought their parents to the job interviews. I'm going to just go on a wild guess there and assume those were parents that rarely let their kids fail. And now I'm about to step into it. So that was the easy part. Most people agree with me on that. Let's talk about moms and dads, because this is going to get me in trouble, and I'm okay with that. Moms, your husband isn't going to do it the way you did. Your dad, your kid's dad, is not going to do it the exact way that you would do it. And it's okay. It's okay. Well, I didn't like his tone. It's okay. They'll be okay. Did he violate one of the 6 rules of communication? I'm not talking about any of that. I'm not talking about hitting your kids. But there's so many dads I talk to, they're like, my wife just criticizes everything that I do. I have bad news. You need to stop that. Let your husband fail. Let your baby daddy fail. And let your kids fail in how they interact with each other. Let the process work itself out. And the same is true for dads and moms. It's just dads tend to be more disengaged. Just yesterday, my wife and my son had a little coming together of the storm clouds. And I heard my son's side of the story first. I ran into my wife. I was talking to her and I said, hey, Joey's upset with you. He says that you yelled at him. He says that you said things that, in a loud and harsh way. And she's like, I didn't. Da, da, da. I'm like, I get it. And I support you. Key phrase, and I support you. And you might want to consider talking to him just to make sure nothing got lost in translation. Right? Now, here's the thing. Turns out Joey was wrong. He failed. It's okay. He can fail. But one of the things that we do is we often cut our partner in raising our children off at the ankles, and then we're like, why? Well, you could have done it differently. Of course we could have done it differently. We could almost always do everything differently. But what was the overarching process? Did I follow our family rules? Did I follow our family principles? And by the way, my wife doesn't do this. We disagree on things. Especially with Joey. I tend to be rougher with her, not with him, not her, with him. Like I'll wrestle with him and stuff. And she doesn't always like that, but I think it's good for him. And we just live in that tension. It's okay. But our kids, you have to let your kids fail. Here's the thing that I think happens for a lot of us. We feel like our kids are an extension of us. So there's 2 reasons we don't want them to fail. 1, we don't want our kids to experience pain. I get that. I hate seeing my kids in pain. I think we all do. We don't want them to feel the discomfort and the distress of failing. But we know also that if our kids are going to live meaningful lives with less regret, they're going to have to be able to tolerate distress. And it's hard. It's very difficult. It's painful. And we don't want our kids to experience that pain. And that makes total sense. We don't want our kids to fail because we don't want them to feel the pain of failing. We don't want them to be the advocates for themselves and fail at it, because that means they experience double pain. They failed at advocating for themselves and whatever the issue was that they needed to advocate about. That's the first reason we don't want our kids to fail. The second one is probably a bit less altruistic. It's because we see our kids as an extension of ourselves. And we think if they fail, that means we failed. And we were going to be the perfect parents that did it better than our parents. And you don't have to be a parent too long to realize that that's probably not the case. You might do it better than your parents. You might do it differently than your parents, but you're not going to be perfect. And that's really hard. And I get it. Right? We don't want our kids to fail for a variety of reasons. The idea that we could sum that up in 2 reasons is silly. Sometimes we just don't want the discomfort for ourselves of watching our kids fail. And sometimes it's really a complicated mess. But either way, one of the most difficult things that we have to do is allow our kids to fail. Everything we want for our kids as adults is on the other side of letting them fail. And there's various levels to this, right? Like sometimes I talk to parents and like, well, I let my kids fail. I let them play sports. And in playing sports, failure should be built into the experience of letting our kids play sports. It should be. It isn't often, but it should be, right? And so that's something you need to check. I've hired people who played sports and we thought, okay, well, they have this experience and it didn't work out well because they didn't bring that level. I've hired people that didn't play sports and their parents let them fail and it did work out. Now, it's not the sports, right? I want to be clear about that. But we don't want to rely on the sports or the school or the church. We want to be the people that allow our kids to engage whatever it is that they're hoping to do with the possibility of failure. We want them to engage their phones. We want them to engage their devices. We want them to engage their friends. We want them to engage their schools so that they can learn to fail, fall down, get back up, and go again. And it is absolutely terrifying as a parent to let your kid do this. I have this little electric, or digital, not electric. It is electric, but it's a digital photo album that sits on my desk where I record these. And there are pictures of my kids and my wife and our trips as floating across. And one of them is a picture from the day that I took my oldest daughter to get her college ID. And it was terrifying. And I think about, like, when my youngest daughter graduated high school, I think about all the times that I wanted to engage and solve the problem for them and realize, nope, can't do that. Shouldn't do that. So I get it. I want to do those things too, but we can't, because when we let our kids fail, we invite them to actually reap the benefits that come with failing. And when we take failure away, we rob them of those benefits. All right, let's let our kids fail, as difficult as that is. Hey, if you like this, please share it with your friends. I really appreciate that. It'd be very helpful to me. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time.